NRA night race coming up
next
as you
weekend.
Heard
Julie,
already.
are you going to Bristol?
I am not.
Oh, well, end of segment.
Thanks, Julie.
That was quick.
I am not.
But
Well, you don't
I
want to
am
bring
Groot.
your 3 kids all the way down to a NASCAR race.
I don't want to bring him anywhere.
by the way, a little more housekeeping. During the break, we're back here with Cam and Company, Fueled by Hornady.
Hi.
It's Julie Gunlock, Independent Women's Forum, joining us here in studio. Cam is off today. We'll be back tomorrow.
Yes.
And so, Julie, we're talking about during the break, besides we're going to cover Bristol next week. This week, this guy here and Danny Lyon head down tomorrow to Nolans for the ALEC, their big convention,
Yes.
the American Legislative Exchange Council. Love those guys.
You have more experience with Alec than we do. Tell us what we should expect down there.
Oh, ALEC is great. I mean, it's a really great opportunity to learn about innovative ideas and new legislative proposals. So you'll and really meet people. I think that's one of the best parts. You know, we have a lot of all of us. You know, we have sort of Twitter relationships with people.
Right.
You might correspond with people online, but you actually get to meet those people, and that's really fun too.
Well, and because we work for NRA TV and we're used to getting lots of fun reactions from the left. My TweetDeck column has one about their conference, and I've already seen some great ones. Can't wait. Some leftists can't wait to invite us to New Orleans.
Yeah.
They're just so friendly.
I hope the protesters are there. Make it kind of
I'm sure-
special.
I'm
I
sure
shouldn't say
they'll
I
be
hope, but
we were also down a short time ago. Danny and a couple of other of us for Stinchfield's Grand Stinchfield program to do live hits from New Orleans during a sheriff's convention,
Association, yep.
and yes, there was protesters outside for that too. So I'm sure they will
Why
be
would you
there.
protest the sheriffs? Isn't that weird?
it's weird.
Speaking of, before we get to this, I got to talk about something real quick. So, on Friday, I don't know if anyone follows me on my Twitter feed. I'm a big proponent of the Yazidis, and
Oh, that was a great tweet.
And 4 years ago, Friday was the 4th anniversary. It was the 4th anniversary on Friday of what happened in Mount Shingal in Iraq, when thousands upon thousands of Yazidis were killed in a genocide. Thousands upon thousands of girls. I mean, literally like 5, 6, 7 teenage girls, up to
Thousands.
adults, raped. There's still thousands in captivity. I remember the viral, bring back our girls from
that
Michelle
helped.
Obama. Yeah,
That worked.
I mean, they're still right now. They're in sexual slavery as we speak. There's just horrific crimes against humanity, war crimes, just everything you could possibly imagine, genocide. And as a Jew, things that really resonate with me. So I'm very passionate about this cause. So we're there on Friday, and it's in front of the White House. For the past few years, they've had this. It's the Free Yazidi Foundation. They've had a remembrance, very somber. They light a bunch of candles. They do a couple speeches. No one's screaming, "F you ISIS." It's very matter of fact.
Yeah.
Listen, we suffered under genocide. Genocide could happen at any moment again, and these girls are still nowhere to be found, and they're sexual slaves in 2018. I mean, it's just horrific stuff. Now, if you'll notice, I'm sure a lot of people saw the story yesterday where Rosie O'Donnell and a bunch of Broadway singers, who knows why.
Wow.
There's been this thing now the past few weeks. They've had this nightly protest in front of the White House. So last night it was Rosie O'Donnell's turn with Broadway singers. Fine, whatever. So when we were there on Friday, that night's protest was ready to go. And ours, it's a pretty serious, somber affair. And I was live streaming it next to the speakers, and I keep noticing one guy, one woman from that group. They're like,
Time.
hello, we've got to sing Kumbaya. And I mean, I'm trying to make light of it because I was in the moment. This one guy, and I try not to be a violent person. I wanted to punch him in the face so hard because these people are trying to rush a commemoration of genocide and sexual slavery, and so we're finally done. We lost the PA, then they started, and they still wanted to do some commemoration, so we took. Everyone grabbed all the candles. There's hundreds of candles. We moved down Pennsylvania Avenue away from the White House because it's too loud because they're just singing. It's not like, hey, call your congressman.
Right.
Hey, this is how you fight the Trump agenda. There's people holding up the sign treason, which, by the way, treason has 7 letters. There are only 6 people. Add that up in your head. It's not like they're doing something concrete. They were just singing and dancing, and for that they had to rush us along. listen, I am, and I said this week, I'm so happy we live in a country where people can stand in front of the White House and say treason. That's fine.
And make up problems. I mean, literally make things
whatever
up.
you want, fine. This is a free country, but the fact that they rushed us to get to their nonsense. I mean, it's me. Then you look at Rosie O'Donnell on Broadway. I mean, it's just so unserious.
Well,
you know?
I mean, look, that's been happening culturally in this country for many, many years, but it's been happening for decades within the feminist movement. Is that it really bothers me as a woman that so many mainstream feminist organizations ignore true human rights abuses towards women in countries abroad and what's happened to the Yazidi women, and then focus on teeny little infractions. Like
Sadiq Khan will outlaw like body shaming ads on the adverts in the tube or something.
Yeah, but then we also see even in Hollywood, right? They, jackhammered Trump's star, but like Bill Cosby's is untouched, right? And Kevin Spacey's untouched, right? Yeah. It's just this selective sort of outrage. And again, we've known for a long time, mainstream feminist organizations, they make money off this sort of grievance culture. So you can't ever admit things have gotten better because then your raison d'etre is gone. There's no reason for you to exist anymore if you can't constantly say things need to improve, things need to improve. I see this as a mother, this sort of grievance culture really taking hold. Christy Teigen recently had her second baby and she's breastfeeding on Twitter every 7 seconds, and that's great. Okay, fine. I don't care what you do if you want to expose yourself on these, privately owned, platforms. But the narrative that always goes along with it is women just don't have support in breastfeeding. Women, nobody talks about this stuff. It's just, it's a private battle. And also every time, every time a movie star has a baby, she automatically has post, depression, and then of course the commentary is no one ever talks about it. Everyone talks about these things. It is an endless conversation about whether you should breastfeed or bottle feed and whether you have depression after having a baby. These things are talked about all the time. But again, it's like this need to constantly find grievances and find complaints. Just get on with it, people. Get on with it, right? And so, again, I think that what you're talking about with these Broadway stars, getting up and complaining about something in the face of an actual genocide, an actual tragedy.
And the causes, don't want to diminish it, but you compare that apples to oranges. It's like this niche cause, like women need more support in breastfeeding.
Well, to that point, I found this tweet. It made me think of this as soon as you said it. This is from Kamala Harris. We won't be silent about race. Right. We won't be silent about sexual orientation. We won't be silent about immigrants' rights. These are the very issues that define our identity of Americans. Who the hell has been silent about race?
Was it John Gabriel who had a tweet after? I don't want to say the wrong person, but someone said, "Thank God," because nobody's talking about that, right? Like,
race, sexual orientation, and immigrant rights is 24/7 of CNN.
Right?
Who isn't talking about this?
Who isn't talking about this? And so, but again, I think though this sort of, if you buy into this sort of grievance culture, if you're part of it, it blinds you to actual grievances, like actual problems in the world. And so, whatever you're talking about, this phenomenon happens, repeatedly throughout these different areas.
At least, though, Cameron, on a lighter note, what was this with Rosie and her folks? Was it quality singing? Because they're all Broadway people.
It wasn't that great.
No, I saw a guy smashing a drum set.
It was Rosie.
It was Rosie. Right, exactly. So there's we talked about this article with Andrew Langer in the first hour, and I want to talk to you, Julie, as especially because you're a woman, and I want to get your take on this. This is where did I put it? Okay, Washington Post, of course. This is an article, Breaking the Grip of Men and War on the Way We Memorialize History.
This I missed earlier. This I missed.
Causes.
Oh, was this in the Post today? Boy, they do embarrass themselves.
This is from yesterday. So pretty much saying that, we need, like I guess you said with Christy Teigen, we need to lift up women and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But it's, and we also talked about the idea, and you have 3 young boys right now, and we also talked about the idea that this stuff is not being taught as much anymore. We're not being taught that Americans are heroes. We're not being taught that
Absolutely not.
the right people
We're not
won.
we're not even talking about how the American sort of way of life is worth preserving. It's just negative, 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 negative. Western culture is worth preserving. A lot of people get sort of really nervous about ever defending the United States.
Isn't that
or
the craziest thing?
It is.
It's like it's almost taboo to say you're a proud American.
Right.
What the hell do you have to be proud of?
There is no other country in the world that has given, and really Western society in general, has really given women more freedoms than anywhere in the world. And we can't celebrate that. In fact, it is American feminists, British feminists, and Western feminists that complain the most about Western culture, the patriarchy, and yet, sort of forget that there are still developing countries in terms of women's rights out there. And those countries, I don't understand I will never respect a country. I will never respect a tradition where I have to cover up head to toe. I will never respect the tradition of genital mutilation. I will never respect a culture that tells me I can't drive or vote. I mean, I'm sorry. Call me. I'm culturally, shallow or I'm culturally closed off. I'm fine being closed-minded on those things.
Well, talk about FGM, female genital mutilation. That's one of the biggest topics the feminists don't talk about.
They don't talk
about it.
And
you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe, you're whatever people want to say about you. Just if you mention it.
Yeah. Well, one of the Women's March leaders is Sarsour, who Linda Sarsour, who promotes Sharia law, talks about it in these glowing terms. You won't have credit card debt, you won't have to drive, you won't have any responsibilities. And this was one of the founders of the Women's March. I mean, we can go on and on about the Women's March and what a joke they are. But again, if the culture in America demands that I respect other cultures that really, again, make me wear a burqa, don't allow me to drive, don't allow me to vote. I have no problem, not appreciating that particular culture or that particular country or their leadership.
Julie, we went to school around the same time. Do you see a huge difference in the teaching of history with your 3 kids versus what we were taught? How different is it?
Yeah, I think I didn't go to the best schools for elementary school.
Well, forget the quality.
So it's hard for me to compare.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I will say, I feel like in this area, it's rich in history. I'm really impressed with how my school teaches my kids. I actually don't have too much of a problem with the actual curriculum. I have a problem with so many other things, for instance, their discipline policies here in Alexandria, but very shades of Broward County, if you know what I mean. But
understood.
But no, I am. But I do. Look, I think I actually read some of my kids' curriculum. I make sure, especially the science stuff. I want to make sure.
You say actually, do parents not?
Oh gosh, no. I don't think they knew what to do when I told them to send me the science curriculum.
Right.
They were like, oh,
wow.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of the schools don't even want your nose in that.
Right.
Why do you want to see what we're teaching your
Right.
kid? It's like, because it's my kid.
Well, I checked. I personally checked the science curriculum. The history curriculum, what I've seen come home, I've never had a problem with, and I've been pretty happy with it. But I had some issues with the science curriculum, and I had some problems with. I wanted to check on how they discuss sex, and so I checked on that, which I actually didn't have a major problem with. But again, I've always encouraged, and on this show, I've encouraged parents to get more active. I do feel bad for parents, but at the same time, I get really frustrated with parents who just say, "Let's just, I'm just going to stay over here and act like I don't notice these things," and I get outraged or surprised by things when they're not asking any questions.
Wait, so is some of the outrage culture that we are going through right now, is that because people are genuinely surprised by what they're hearing for the first time?
No,
because a lot of the outrage to me is manufactured.
Yeah,
But are you saying some of it is real outrage?
No, I think sometimes parents are really caught off guard when they hear their schools are teaching something or not teaching something. But I think that if you're a little bit more aggressive with your children's education, you ask for the curriculum, you ask for more information at the beginning of the year, then you won't be so shocked and maybe can head things off. Or talk to your kids. I mean, I've talked to you about an issue. As you know, I'm very pro genetic modification of food.
Yes.
Not to bore, you're all like, oh, there go the ratings. They're all turning off the radio.
It's
Turn
like you
it
go
down.
to a Chinese restaurant, you say no MSG. Julie says more GMO.
No, and MSG, by the way, is totally fine. But that's a different show. That's a different show. I love chemicals. But anyway, so
that should be your bumper sticker.
But
I
my child came home, or he came home with some bad information about agriculture.
Right.
And I went in, I met with the teacher. Everything went fine, and she actually allowed my son to get up and kind of give a corrected view of things, which was great. But again, like you have to talk to your kids. You have to find out what they're
Right.
learning and ask them.
Wait,
you know.
hold on a second, Bob. I'm sorry. What was wrong? So people know.
So my teacher did an experiment, which I looked at the curriculum, and I think she veered off a little bit from it, but she basically said that pesticides equal pollution. Well, pesticides, yes, can be if they're badly used, if they're used improperly, but used the correct way, they are not. And the other thing is that GMO technology, if we adopt GMO technology, we then can use less pesticides.
Right.
So there's, but
Why
anyway,
don't people ever understand that?
I don't know. Anyway,
that is so frustrating.
But the point is that she made it sound like all pesticides are poison. And so I went into her and I was like, "Come on, that's not true. That's not talk to a farmer. Talk to an agrochemist. Like talk to someone who really that's not true." And she agreed that it may have been badly done. But it was great. I had a great conversation, and my son was able to go in and talk. He talked about how great pesticides are to the whole class.
What do the anti-pesticide factions? What do they want?
They want us to do organic farming. Now, what's interesting is that in organic farming, you can also use a different class of pesticides.
Right.
The USDA approves organic chemicals or pesticides that can be used for organic crops, and then for conventional crops, there are a different class. Okay. And so you're not going pesticide free when you buy organic, but a lot of these.
Stop right there for a second. That's something I've never, as long as I've known you, I've never even heard that.
Yeah.
So what true organic food that you see in the supermarket that's like 2.5 times more expensive?
It's a lie.
There can be pesticides.
Oh, totally.
used.
Oh, totally. And they're not going to hurt you.
Idea.
And they're not going to hurt you. The pesticide residue is extremely low. Poor Pop. I'm sorry. You've been trying to get a question in.
No, but organic also, Cameron. It's a marketing thing.
Oh, it's a
No,
complete,
I get that,
yeah.
but I didn't know pesticides were allowed.
Oh, yeah. Pesticides are allowed in organic agriculture, too. So you're
Wow.
not actually... So a lot of people, when you say, why do you buy organic? They say, to limit my pesticide residue for my children. You're like, well, I got something to tell you here. And you're spending...
wait, there's more.
And how's that $8 grape you're eating? That's great. I would recommend everybody read... Henry Miller has a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying that basically organic is a lie. And it is a great, great, great piece. I encourage everyone to read it. I've also written on this issue quite a bit myself. But back to the education thing, again, I found out my son had this lesson. It was, I will say, it was very cute. My son came home and he was sort of like, I think my teacher might have said something that wasn't true. Oh. And because he hears me do radio shows. He's heard me on Cam and Company where I'm like, shut up, right? Shut up. I'll give you $100. Just don't say anything. But they've heard me talk about this, and so he brought it up, and I talked to him about it. But again, I think parents need to be more involved in everything. And like this story here, it's also important you choose books and read your kids' books, or have them read books that you approve of. Don't just let them read the books that's in the curriculum. Create a library for your family. There's books that are more libertarian and teach economic principles that my children have read, and I think that's important too.
Wow.
Two things about education, about that story. First of all, it just always amazed me. My perspective on this is my daughter went to a private school, not a public school, our choice, but they always pushed there that it's a partnership between the teachers, administration. You can add in your church. It's a partnership. You're part of the deal.
Yeah.
It's not like in loco parente where we give you the kid, I'll see you at 4:30 or whatever.
Right.
You're part of that deal. Number one, and the other thing I was going to say with the school she went, curriculum was great. History was awesome. The way they taught it all the way through time, like the timeline, and it was much better than I ever understood history when I was growing up. So, but that being said, they also were, most people were much more liberal than me at the school. So sometimes I had to fight the same thing where I don't like it when they come home, whether it's something about the environment or something, and you can tell that they've been kind of tuning
every year.
the agenda. They bring home their...
Every year you have to do the polar bear conversation. No, honey, the polar bears are thriving. No. That picture that went viral of the starving polar bear, that was all like just he was sick. He was sick. He was starving for other reasons.
You actually admitted
no,
it
I
finally.
know. She's the Stephen Glass of photojournalism. I mean, she totally made it up. And so, but you have to, and of course the original had 4 billion tweets.
Of course, right.
Her comments had like 100.
And my favorite thing too is when they say they finally admit it. More often than not, you hear, well, it's likely could have happened.
Well, Well,
It's
she
still
actually did.
happening elsewhere.
It was honestly, it was exactly like how my husband apologizes, right? It was like,
Oh,
it was
no.
like,
Uh-oh. Mine did the
well,
gun-
yeah.
I'm sorry if you took that all too seriously.
Wow. I'll look
that
inside the
photo.
gun-locked marriage.
He's at work. He's
Okay,
he's
he's
not
not
listening.
listening. Okay, fine.
Not yet.
So yeah, it was. She said this, and to give the listeners some perspective here, there was a video of a starving polar bear. And he really looked bad,
Yeah,
but
it was bad.
it turns out he was sick. He
Right.
had some sort of a disease, I don't know what, but he was dying from unrelated causes to climate change. Yet it was National Geographic, I
Yes, it
think,
was.
that put this out there, and the photojournalist and the journalist that did the story basically said that this was a polar bear that was stranded because of climate change.
Right.
Okay, so fast forward a couple years, all these kids are crying in schools because their teachers are showing them the starving
Right.
polar bear.
They killed
and she
Sarah
basically
Sarah McLachlan soundtrack.
Will you? Okay. And it turns out it was a lie. And so she came out and she said, well, I was just trying to make the point that this could happen.
Right.
And this was a perfect illustration, and it would really tug at your heartstrings, but it's a lie. And so again, it's amazing how, again, this becomes part of the culture,
Well, there was a story yesterday, a tweet. It was either yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't know if you saw it. It was a viral tweet. It was a picture purported to be above the clouds at the huge fire in California right now, and it was like there was the clouds. There's all red underneath, and it was a warning against climate change. Whatever.
Right, of course.
The guy got like tens of thousands of retweets. Turns out it was a picture of lava from Hawaii. But the red was the lava under the
enough.
clouds, and that got
Close
like
enough.
7 retweets or something like that. And he didn't. And he even said, "Well, apparently this is a wrong picture." But the guy can't delete the tweet because, God forbid, he went
'Cause he's
viral.
famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you delete that tweet?
Right.
It could happen, But the other thing you said, Julie, that rings true to me with your kids is you have to have a conversation with them. Some of the best time I'll spend is time in the car or at home just talking to my daughter, because that's when you find out what's really going on. It's one thing to read the curriculum, and you had a great exchange with your son about that whole thing, and he brought it up to you. That's great, bravo. But it's like, just have find out what they're talking about, what they're thinking, what they're hearing, and not only learning from their teachers, but from their peers, like the other kids in school. And
I think it's really also important just for you. I think parents need to understand, and I don't know that this is only public schools. I think this is for all schools. I think of my children's school as 50% of their education. We put a lot of pressure on them to read a lot of books and comments. And my kids are, I feel I don't want to they read all the time and they're perfect and they always have a book in their face. That's not true. But we try to pick books that we think are maybe not taught in schools anymore. Dead white men, written by dead white men. Oh gosh, Mark Twain. I actually wonder if my kids will ever be told to read Huckleberry Finn. You've got magazines now pulling poetry that doesn't sort of pass the PC smell test, and so I do wonder if some of these books won't really be regarded as important. So make them read that. Pick that book out for your son and say, I think you'd really enjoy Huckleberry Finn.
Reading is so important. I know a young lady who said to me the other day, I'm weird because I like to read.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right, we have about a minute left. Julie, let's talk about what brought you in for. The lemonade stand.
What was that? Oh, that story.
This is this is like
Where
red meat.
are we? There's been a lot of stories recently about
There's been some bad ones. One out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is where I grew up. So I'm like, what is wrong with you people? But it only takes one. What is it? Gladys Kravitz, right? It only takes one sort of annoying neighbor. She calls the cops on this little 10-year-old who's selling cookies. But then this morning, I saw that in Urbana, Illinois, which I grew up in that area, Champaign-Urbana, a little boy was selling lemonade to save up for something, and I can't remember what he was saving up for. And some Gladys Kravitz neighbor, sort of Patty Permit type, called the police. And so the entire police not the entire. They tried to get everyone who was on duty that day stopped by that lemonade stand and paid the kid for a glass of lemonade.
Good.
And that is great. And you got to give kudos to the. First of all, I feel so bad for the police, departments nationwide for having to respond to this these absolute ridiculous calls. I mean, we see stories of this every day.
Sure.
I didn't get the right order at McDonald's. This. But this stuff is particularly annoying. And so I was glad to hear about the Urbana Police Department stepping up and doing that for that kid.
Shout out to Julie's hometown.
That's right.
You gotta
Champaign
love it.
Urbana. Good folks there in the Midwest.
Good hearty folk.
Good lemonade, too.
Good lemonade. Julie, how do we find you? How do we reach you?
I'm at iwf.org. All my writing is there.
IWF.org. Julie Gunlock, thank you so much.
John's writing it down. I saw him get the pen. He's writing it down.
Can you say it
I
slower,
see you every
please?
week, John.
Julie, thank you so much.